Hey everyone, and welcome back to Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast that looks at influential pieces of pop culture's past and present through the lens of my guests. I'm Danielle, your host and producer, and if you're watching on YouTube, I have to acknowledge there's a slight change to my surroundings. It is December, so it is the holidays in my house, and I hope it will not be distracting for you, but I also hope it will brighten your day a little bit, as obviously times are so tough. But anyway, for those of you who have been listening to and are watching all along this third season of the podcast, you've probably already noticed that when I've had writers on this season, they have been authors. I'm a big reader in my personal life, but I never really had the opportunity to write about books or talk to authors as much as I wanted to in my professional life. So while I'm always looking for book recommendations and opportunities to talk about what I've read and enjoyed in more detail, I thought, this is the time. This is my platform. Thus far, the authors I've had on to talk about their books have written nonfiction works about people and properties of the entertainment industry, which I thought might be a fun little bridge for those of you who have been following along and talking about some of these people and properties of the entertainment industry. But today, I'm thrilled to welcome my very first novelist to the podcast. Kyra Davis Lurie has written more than a dozen books, including the Just One Night trilogy, the Sophie Katz novels, and most recently, The Great Man. Okay, so Kyra, welcome to Made Possible by Pop Culture. I'm very excited to have you here. And I mean, we're mostly going to be here to talk about your latest novel, The Great Man, but at the same time, I do have some questions about the Sophie Katz novels because you ended in a way that made it feel like she was coming back.
Yeah.
Is that ever, do you feel like maybe possible?
It's not impossible. Like so I am not working on a Sophie right now, but
Okay.
I know there's such a deep love amongst her. Not huge, but still I want to say fanatical, but really like devoted fan base. And I do feel some responsibility to them. So I can never quite get myself to let her go. And she did give me my start. So yeah, so maybe.
And it does feel like
Definitely maybe.
like all of those books touched on things of the times. And because it is a few years later now, it feels like there's
Yeah.
probably a lot
Oh my
to
God.
do.
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, her head would explode. I mean, think about it. It's like, what if you came from 2009 to now like that? It's just, it would be a lot.
But your last book wasn't written in 2000.
No, I mean, it was okay. So most recent
No.
was
I read a lot of them together,
so
but
yeah.
then the
I
more
mean,
recent ones
right.
I
Okay,
felt
so
like
the most
were
recent was like 2016, I think,
okay.
was the most recent one. But it's like it's still those that's a big 10 years. I
Yes.
mean, it's
Yeah,
like, and it came out in 2016, which means it was written in 2015.
sure.
And so yeah, it's this I don't know. I mean, and I also have this new thing, a new rule where I will never write a book in the current present day ever again. I will write a
Oh
book,
no.
right. I will write a book that maybe is set in like 2023, or maybe 10 years from now, because then I'm like, people give me some grace, but things change too fast. They
Mm.
change too fast. If you write a book that's like you think you're in present tense and it comes out in 2020, everything is different, right? So no, I'm done. I was talking to somebody else who wrote a book dealing with abortion, and while she was reading the book, writing the book, abortion laws changed 3 times.
Yeah.
No, I was
Yeah,
like,
I was just
I,
thinking that. It was when you
yeah,
said 2020, I was like, oh yeah, because
right,
nobody could have predicted COVID. But
right.
now, being 2025, looking back on COVID, maybe. I'm not
Maybe.
saying you should write a book about COVID. I'm just saying
No,
like the
right,
distance makes sense. And
right.
actually, that makes a lot of sense for then. I was going to ask you a little bit about like deciding to go so far back in time with the
Mhm.
great man, where that idea of
Right.
going that far back into history came from. But I think maybe that is also a little bit part of it.
That's part of it. That's part of it. It's not, but it's a small part of it. I learned about that history on listening to KCRW, our local public radio station. Um, and I was fascinated. And also, it really hit me how I just didn't know. I didn't know how the 10 freeway got there. I didn't know any of this, right? I didn't know what was there before. And it's this really rich history. And those people, the court case that they dealt with changed history. I mean, it's like that was the first what that court case changed everything for the entire nation. And I didn't know this community existed. And um the parent when I heard about the history, like particularly like Hattie McDan, I mean,
Hmm.
so this is a book set in a very affluent African American community, right? That existed here in Los Angeles. And you know how Hattie McDaniel would have like these gala parties where she's like dressed to the nine in diamonds, and Duke Ellington is her entertainment, Clark Gable, Lena Horner on the guest list. I'm like, well, that's the Great Gatsby, but it's real and it's black. And so that was the impetus, right? It was
Hmm.
like it's right there.
Okay.
and and I feel like in this time, I don't think we are right now. There's a whole new rush towards erasure. But at the time it was creeping. I did see that. I saw the backlash for expanding our history. And
Hmm.
so I really think that we keep a history alive through storytelling. That's how it's done. That's what engages people. And so to be able to take storytelling, take the bones of the great American novel and then put it into this American community that people don't know about, but elevate it. It's to I mean elevate it in their consciousness. Yeah, that was irresistible. So that's why I chose that community at that period of time.
Well, also just The Great Gatsby. I mean, I feel like that you've been circling that, like it was referenced in the Sophie Katz novel. So like I feel like you
Yeah.
maybe also have been circling that
Yeah.
opulence for a little while.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's so American, right? It's like, I mean, um, that that kind of wealth and that what Fitzgerald was genius about there is um simultaneously conveying in the story are um, attraction and attraction to and repulsion from conspicuous displays of wealth, right?
Right.
And that's a through line, right? I mean, it was true in the 1920s. It's true now.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, we look at this while there we see everybody like wanting to have the brand names and just gushing over the Met Gala while at the same time being disgusted with billionaires and all. It's like it's all there. We're still there,
Right.
and that is and nobody had done that um before Fitzgerald, not exactly,
Hmm.
not in that way. Edith Wharton, I guess, kind of played with it in House of Mirth, um, but not to the same degree. And um, so yeah, so that's always that it is definitely a story that stayed with me. I never planned to do a retelling. That was never like something I aspired to.
Okay.
But when it hit me, when I heard the history, I was like, oh, and if Gatsby hadn't lived inside of me the way that it had, I
Right.
don't know if it would have occurred to me, right? So,
But once it did,
mhm,
I mean, we're not going to give away everything. I mean, a lot of times I say on this podcast, like, the thing is out.
right.
Spoilers, your fault if you haven't already consumed it. I do think it's a little different with books because it's easy
Yeah,
for me to say, go pause this episode, go watch an episode of a TV show we're going to talk about
right,
and come back.
right,
People
right.
read at different speeds. It's a little harder. So I do want to say we're not going to completely spoil everything for you who are listening and maybe have not read this book yet. But the one thing that I was cognizant of while I was reading was how similar you maybe wanted to trace Charlie's story with James and
Mhm.
Gatsby himself. Like just in the sense of like some of the beats and some of the, let's face it, like there's crime, there's murder, there's things
Yeah,
that go bad in
yeah,
both stories.
yeah,
And certainly the end.
yeah.
Without saying how it ends, like I mean, there are different racial implications in your book
Mhm.
when a black man is going to get killed versus Gatsby. So
Yep.
I'm curious how you kind of worked through those things in saying, like, I have something I want to say about my community, but also I have to be cognizant to not completely do maybe what F. Scott Fitzgerald has already done.
Right. One of the things that's also really interesting to me about Gatsby, and I am answering your question, is that that it focuses on reinvention through a capitalist, the devices of capitalism, right?
Hmm.
And um there is no community that has reinvented itself more than the Black community. We went from, slaves to Beyonce. That's a really big that's a big leap and big jump. By the 20s, the term the new Negro was
Hmm.
being circulated among Black activists and the Black press. How we are presenting ourselves to the world. So Fitzgerald's themes and stories, it definitely, it richly resonates in that community, but it does take on a whole different connotations too, because um, Gatsby was trying to adhere to a very specific societally accepted and exalted position, right? Like, being of money, white, wealthy, young man of money. That was a place where everybody in society was like, yeah, we're on. That's the goal, right? Whereas um, James and this whole community are taking a space of these extraordinarily affluent African Americans. No, the society didn't want to see that.
Hmm.
Society was trying to actively make that go away.
Right.
And um so you're aspiring to something that um that outside, or no, not outside forces, that your world is trying to erase, right?
Hmm.
And so you're trying to to reinvent yourself there, even though you know that everyone's trying to destroy that there, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, so when you do it through that lens, the bones of the story, there it's the same bones, but boy, the musculature
Yeah.
and the changes so much, right? How you see that same story changes entirely, and you have to adjust to that by your characters and their considerations, and how people react in the community reacts to those characters.
Hmm.
um so you know with with Gatsby, crime is like, it makes it kind of, it's uncouth. It's uncouth in Gatsby, right? It's like, it's not even that they're really judging him exactly, because no one in that story is virtuous, right?
Right.
It's just a matter of what, you have to have um neater crimes, right? Like, you have to, like, and less and be less conspicuous about it.
Hmm.
It's like, in the Black community, in the affluent Black community, these people who are trying so hard to hold on to their positions despite
Yeah.
unbelievable forces trying to pull away. When you bring in somebody who earned their living possibly in ways that are actually rightfully disrepute, right? Um, that threatens the whole community, right?
Right.
It's like, when Gatsby commits his crime and the rest of the people find out, they can just disassociate and say, "Oh yeah, that's him," and to be
But that,
honest,
I mean, but that's just their privilege because, like, in
exactly,
theory, the same thing should be true in your
exactly,
book, but it's just
exactly.
not the position
It's
that they're in.
not exactly, and so again, so that changes the whole community's
Yeah.
reaction to it. So yeah, it was, oh, gosh, it was such a um a rich playground of things to to work with. It was just there was so much there to like look at the nuances, hold up to different lights to develop, and then also, you ask about how I decided, what needs to change, what's so on and so forth.
Well, I was actually thinking specifically of the ending when I asked that question, and maybe it's unfair to talk about the ending at this stage because we haven't talked about a lot of details of the book yet. So
Right.
maybe we'll put pause on that question for a minute or two. And still, I
Yeah.
don't want to completely spoil it. Although, I mean,
I will
I
say this,
think people
that
who
yeah,
have even started it kind of know where it might go because they know where Gatsby, if they know where Gatsby goes.
yeah, that's true. I am surprised how many people have not read The Great Gatsby. I thought, I mean, it was just like the first thing when we got into freshman year, was like, you gotta read The Great
Yeah, that's
Gatsby. And but apparently that's not true for everybody. So
no, it is, but I was one of the kids that didn't want to do assigned reading. I only wanted to do what I wanted to read. So I
right.
didn't read it until honestly very recently.
Okay.
And if I can be totally transparent, people are going to yell at me. I read it because I was reading your book. And
Oh my
because
gosh.
your book was pitched to me as like, oh, it's like the Great Gatsby. And I was like, well, I should probably read The Great Gatsby then, shouldn't I? So I was like, let me read both of these and then have you on, which is why it took a minute to have you on, even though I'm
Right.
a fast reader. And because I just, I think it was one of those things like when someone tells you great work of literature, you have to read this and then you have to dissect it in class. Like I didn't want to do that when I was younger. I wanted to read something and absorb it for myself. And I
I
didn't feel
totally
like I
get
could do that in class. But that was me.
that.
So no, that is a good point. Like I don't think it's an obvious where this goes if you don't know where Gatsby is. I think it's written, very well in terms of like the twists that come up for twist is maybe an unfair word, but like the arc for the
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
and I do want to talk about, in a way, it's a li I don't feel like James is really your protagonist. And I think,
Not.
and I think that, but what I'm about to say is I feel like I might have set this up a little bit unfairly because we're talking about comparisons to Gatsby and comparisons to the character of Gatsby. But I
Mhm.
mean, really, it's Charlie. And I mean, he's this character who was a soldier and he's just moved to LA because his cousin tells him to come out here and he kind of can't believe, I say here because I'm in LA, and he kind of can't believe how people in his community are able to live, to your point of like affluence and this community where they were not supposed to be because a lot of the houses say they can't be sold or rented to people of color and they just ignored it and did it anyway, which is a whole other issue, which I would love to talk a little bit about the research you had to do for a character like Charlie,
Yeah.
but also for those pieces of history. Like Charlie, I feel like you can create a lot of him. You have to do
Mhm.
some research for the soldier aspect, sure,
Mhm.
but a lot of him can be whatever you want him to be. But then
Mhm.
you're plunking him down in this world that, as you said, like the court case is very real. Like this is stuff that happened. You have characters that are actors of the time that we've all heard of, like Hattie McDaniel, like we know a little bit, if not a lot. So you can't take it maybe as many liberties in certain areas. So tell me a little bit about like how this worked for you process wise of like creation and research, like the balance and like how you
Yeah.
structured it all.
Well, the research took as long as the creation. So, I mean, I really realized that, if you set a book in 1945, you really have to start your research around 1900 because nothing happens in a vacuum. These people have lived this whole life, right? And it's going to have their experiences will have a major effect on how they experience the moment at hand, right? And so in addition, well, every the most of the secondary characters, both the in that community, both the
Hmm.
celebrities and the business people were real people. And
Okay.
so
So like
I'm really
even the lawyer, I believe, right? Lauren
Lauren Miller.
Miller.
Lauren Miller was real. Charlie's boss, Norman O. Houston, is real. His dentist, Dr. Somerville, is real. They're all real. And um, I, I'm fortunate in that some of those people wrote autobiographies and had them published in small press. So I was able to read those. Many of them wrote pieces for Black publications. So I was able to read those, find those through the archives.
Hmm.
The California Eagle or the Crisis, which was the NAACP paper, the Chicago Defender. Lauren Miller was very, very close. He was a close friend with Langston Hughes. They were best friends, and Langston Hughes would occasionally write about him, but also they traveled together. They did things together. So um, read a lot of Langston Hughes to kind
Hmm.
of get a sense of that time period in his columns in the Chicago Defender. Um, then I watched some old movies, the movies that again that my characters were in.
Sure.
Also, the movies early on where Black people were like silent films with Black people, just trying to see how I knew, I think most of us have, unfortunately, know how mainstream Hollywood wanted Black people to be
Right.
portrayed in early cinema.
Yeah. And
But
sometimes still today. I mean,
and
there are
sometimes
movies,
still today,
honestly, like
yeah.
The Help wasn't that long ago.
No, it really, really was not. It really was not. So it was interesting and I think important for me to get a really sense of these people to see Black made silent films and see how Black people of that
Yeah.
time wanted to see themselves and how they wanted to present themselves to the world, how they wanted to tell their stories. Um, I'm very fortunate in that some of the homes are still there. The places where these people lived. For instance, Norman O. Houston,
Hmm.
his home is still there, and one of the people who lived there was kind enough to let me kind of
Oh,
come in
wow.
and see all that.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, so I didn't want to give any of these people flaws or dramatic characteristics they didn't have. That I didn't have evidence of them having.
Right, right.
Like for instance, I have heard there's lots of speculations about Hattie's sexuality.
Okay.
I didn't
But you
find
don't know
I don't know, right? I didn't find anything there. So I'm not going to have her be bi or gay
if you're
if
not
I
sure.
no, I have there's nothing for me to dig in there. And
But
if I the other kid, so but I don't want nor do I want to make anyone homophobic if they're not homophobic.
sure. But what I find interesting about that is like there's some colorism among these characters. So that to me says you
I found
found that to be true, which is really interesting because, I mean, I see it all the time, even among my white friends, of like there's subtle, or there used to be maybe better now about, my Italian family didn't really like the Irish people on the block or whatever. But I, for whatever reason, just really wanted to believe like, no, you're all banding together.
no,
And what one person's success is helping you all rise,
no,
which I know is not true. I'm a cynical person,
yeah.
but I was kind of surprised, I think, to see the way it played out.
100% found that. And not only if and the conflict between the wealthy business community of LA's Sugar Hill
Hmm.
and the black celebrity community. There's a
Right.
black business community and the black celebrity community
Right.
did not like each other. I mean, at all. That those conflicts were very, very real to the point that at one of my signings, Norman Houston's grandkids showed up. They're in their 70s
Oh,
now. I know.
wow.
And his grandson is like, because you're writing historical fiction, so it's sometimes hard to figure out what's real, what's not.
Sure.
But he goes, some of these conversations, I was like, wait, does my grandfather say that? Because it sounds exactly like what he would say. It's like, he goes, I mean, this is him, right? And because Norman Houston he did so many great things, but he was judgmental of, these celebrities. And these were these people who were thinking, we are doing everything we can for social progress and to be, to live up to this early 20th century idea of the new Negro and all this. And you're undermining all of that with
Mm,
demeaning portrayals on screen.
yeah.
All of it. You are holding us back, and if I could earn my money this way, you should be able to do it too, which I think is an issue we continue to deal with, right?
Yeah.
Someone's like, well, I did it, so why can't you? Right?
Yeah.
Like, and
And also just the idea of like those were the only ways they could be seen on screen. So it's you are not going to be seen at all, or you're going to be seen as a stereotype. And I don't agree with only showing something as a stereotype, obviously, but then there was nobody making better decisions. So it was like, well, they needed to work.
yeah, exact that, and that would have been Hattie McDaniel and Louise Beavers was another
Hmm.
person. That would have been their argument, and
Yeah.
that was their argument.
Yeah.
It's like, would you rather see people, white people in blackface? I mean,
Oh,
because
right. And
you
also,
know,
I'm sorry, then we would have had to wait until what, 2000 to have
right,
a African
right,
American win an
exactly.
Oscar?
Exactly. We're
Is that
pushing,
better?
right. We can move it as fast as we can move it, and that's about it, like things along. So, and so that was very much their position. Um, and I will say this, I do think that both sides had their points. I
Mm,
mean, um, on the one hand, there's no denying that um that people with racist ideas were using Hollywood
mhm,
to perpetuate negative views of African Americans. There's just no question about that. There isn't. And I think that most of, there were the people in the Black Hollywood stars, most of them did what they could, but it's also true that sometimes they would play into it because that's what they thought they needed to do.
mm,
And that includes in their publicity, not just on the films.
sure.
So, it's um and on the other hand, they're also, as we were just saying, they are right. It's like the options are not strong here. And if the choice is we have some guy in blackface acting like a complete idiot, or I'm there and at least trying to bring some dignity to this role, right? Wouldn't you rather me working on the inside for
Yeah.
them, right? So um I do understand where everybody's coming from. Unfortunately, what happens there is because of what Hollywood was trying to promote in terms of the Black image,
Mm,
that meant that they were hiring dark-skinned African
mhm,
Americans almost exclusively. It's like there was that one one movie, Imitation of Life, right, where they had
mm,
this, where Freddie Washington plays a woman who can pass, right? And um, Freddie Washington didn't everybody loved that movie. She didn't get work after that. She didn't get work after that, right?
right.
Lena Horne,
I was just gonna say, yeah, I mean, you write about Lena Horne in the book. Yeah.
oh yeah, we're gonna do this, and then it's like, well, we can't use her. They filmed her singing nightclubs acts that and have no interaction with the characters so they could cut her scenes
Oh,
out before they distribute it through the South, right? So um so you by doing that, by saying, okay, we're going to have the darks, we're just going to hire people who look a certain way, and then the business community um is this light-skinned group, and to be honest,
mm,
that that's on us. I mean, we at the time, for a long time, Howard, you to apply to Howard, you had to send in a photograph. It
mm,
was known that at Howard, there was a lot of colorism. In fact, it's one of the reasons why Lauren Miller left Howard. He just, even though Lauren Miller was very light-skinned, he was
mhm,
biracial. I mean, he wasn't
yeah.
about that and couldn't deal with it. So but what it does is that creates paths for people with lighter skin, right? And they're seeing the darker skinned people being used as as weapons against their image. And so it just um it intensifies these divisions, and it was definitely on display on Sugar Hill, and which makes it even more interesting when they found themselves in a position where they had to work together.
Right. One of
So,
the things too, I think, that I really found interesting was like there's this whole idea of like they're already a group of characters that would arguably not feel safe in a large part of Los Angeles, a large
mhm.
part, even larger part of the world, obviously, but like let's look at Los Angeles first. But now the community that they've created is in danger. And so there's a really interesting look at like if you I kept saying like in my head safety in numbers, which is so reductive, it's terrible, but in my head it was very much like if you can't find a way to come together, like how can you be safe at all when your whole community is in danger because of this issue with your housing.
Right.
And I guess I want to talk a little bit about that, about creating characters that, I mean, there's a lot of dramatic things happening individually with their personal lives and the arcs that they have, but then there's this larger thing happening around them that is arguably much more important,
Yeah.
for them, but also just for the
Yeah.
future of what this community would be. And talk a little bit about, I guess, like the balance you want to just strike there in terms of like how deep could you go? Because there were definitely certain lines, simple, maybe not simple for you to write, but like quick to read lines that were talking about something in someone's path, like learning about Barbara and Barbara's
Mhm.
specifically what happened to Barbara, but then the way that you wrote, and I don't have the line in front of me, but the way that you wrote about her father, like
Mhm.
what he did and then coming out and finding his store turned to ash. And just the way it was written was so poetic and like you could picture
Mhm.
it and there's so much story there, but you don't
Mhm.
have the time to go into that story.
Mhm.
So I'm
Yeah.
curious, I guess, about how you kind of did that, pick and chose
Yeah.
what you'd expand on, what you wouldn't, and how much maybe you did expand on and had to like leave on the
Oh,
cutting room floor.
yeah. Well, a lot of what I left on the cutting room floor was pieces of research that I would have loved to get in, but had nothing to do with anything. But
Happened.
right, like in terms of those pieces that left these massive impacts on these characters, the little things that they witnessed, that they lived through, that aren't pertinent necessarily to the story, it's what's happening right now, but have everything to do with how they're reacting to what's
Hmm.
right now. Um, I just think that's how we as humans walk through the world. Um, you know, we walk into places and there are these moments of just like these reminders, and you're like, and you're just thrown back there for a second. Um, but you can't dwell, you have things to do, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so, um, totally different like levels of severity here, but um as I mentioned to you before we did this podcast, I was at Costco yesterday. um and I was walking in and I was thinking about when my son, we had lost employee insurance, right?
Okay.
And unfortunately, by that point, um, my son had already had a bout with pneumonia and been diagnosed with like some mild asthma. And this was before the ACA, before Obamacare, or
Hmm.
not the ACA, Obamacare, or whatever it's called, Obamacare.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so
that's what I call it.
Exactly, right. So, and I couldn't get prescriptions drug insurance from. Like they wouldn't, nobody would give it to me. So then I would go to Costco and Costco was like, oh, we have a special program for people. And so we can give you a discount on it. And they put me, and, they told me about it. And I remember being so grateful for them. But, being at the time, the stress of how am I going to afford these medications for this kid and feeling like I'm just trying to stay above water
Mm.
here. And then Costco reaching out and like offering me this olive brands and what that meant to me. And then I'm gonna go walk in and buy a new vacuum because my vacuum broke, right? It's like this is not, I'm not gonna stay there, but these thoughts came
Right,
through my
right.
mind as I'm like scanning my card and
Mm.
then walking out the door. So
Hmm.
the time for me, I mean, again, it's, what happened to Barbara was violence. This wasn't violence, but it was exceptionally stressful. And it was at that time piled on with a whole bunch of other stuff and financial issues. With this little boy who's now 26, it was like, oh my God. And so it was a very dramatic part of my life.
Yeah.
Again, you just go on, right? These moments pop into your like, oh, this happened to me, this, I dealt with that, I'm so grateful for this, and then you just keep going, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the benefits of being inside a character's head like I am with Charlie is that I can I can reenact that
Hmm.
the way that we touch on these moments. Someone says something, it brings us back to that hard moment, and then you have to get back to the conversation because you can't stay there. Um, that doesn't work. So yeah, so just being fully in his head and assuming that the way that I think and experience the world is at least somewhat remnant comparable to how the rest
Right.
of everybody else
Well,
thinks.
no, I mean that also explains a lot about his own history and like hiding under the table and the way that we experience his memories in pieces that like are sprinkled throughout the book, which I thought maybe you had done to make it more palatable.
Yeah,
Which I think it did, because I think it would have been a very traumatic scene if you had just like stuck it in the middle somewhere and been like,
right,
flashback, now we're all going to have nightmares.
right,
But it makes a lot of sense what you're saying is that, like, well, no, sometimes it will just, especially if it's traumatic, pop into your brain in a
right.
little bit and then pop out, and then you're reacting to it even though it's not still there.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. So yeah, so it's like I will have a Costco membership forever. It affects our lives. It affects our choices,
Right.
right?
No, that's true. That's true.
Right, so
I do want to like kind of re-ask my ending question again,
yeah,
now that we have talked a little bit more about these characters, because obviously, I mean, I was bringing up the colorism within the group, but obviously there's a lot of racism towards the group from
yeah,
white characters. There's, the neighbors, the police, and certainly that comes into play. How could it not in any
right,
time frame, but in this time
right,
frame where there's, the white neighbors are in cahoots is maybe unfair with police, but like they're
yeah,
going to trust the white neighbor story over a black neighbor story when violence happens. And so I'm curious about, and I don't know how you want to answer this without completely spoiling it. I will leave that up to
absolutely.
you to how much detail you want to give. But I am curious to talk a little bit about kind of the maybe commentary you wanted around James's ending in terms of maybe the racism of the time by what happened to him versus, was there ever a temptation to not do that, to have him be sad and alone on that in that
Yeah,
opulent house by, with losing
yeah.
what he wanted.
I knew how James was going to end. And if you've read The Great Gatsby, you know too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, that's kind of
and
part of it. I was like, because
exactly
is
right,
there
right,
temptation to
so
do
right,
something different? I guess he
right,
doesn't have
exactly
to
right.
kill
It's like
anybody.
right. So I knew that, but I by taking this story and putting it in again in this actual this affluent black community, um, it's in because in Gatsby, it's it's just he was killed by this jealous husband, right? Um, and it's a tragedy, it's a crime of passion, right? Is how that's sort of sold to the world.
Hmm.
And in some ways, there are connotations to that, a little bit of like, oh, he sort of deserved it, right? I think that when you put those things into the black community, that goes on to steroids, right? So the James is exactly the kind of person who, if he's killed, everyone is just going to assume it's completely he's deserving and is of his making. It's like um, you look back at like when Trayvon Martin was killed, I will not forget the people who like started saying, "Oh, well, he was suspended because they found marijuana in his locker." Right? And it's like, yeah, I mean, I gotta tell you, there's a lot of people in this country of all different races that at one point or another had a joint in their locker.
Right.
That's just, and to say, but somehow that spoke to this kid's criminality, and therefore his death was like, well, he was a criminal, right? Um, James does not deserve what happened to him. And James actually was a criminal,
Yeah. I mean,
and
two things can be true. And I think also like the way you explained away his nickname is
right.
also a nice like reinforcement of that.
Right, exactly. So it's so to look at like to look at his humanity and look at how easily society can twist that and manipulate the story to tell one narrative and completely exclude the rest, um, as well as the way, and I am being somewhat vague here, but
Yeah.
the way that the community the community around Gatsby reacts to what happens to him is very different than what the way the community reacts to the what happens to James, even though the feelings towards James in that community are arguably more negative than the feelings were to
Hmm.
Gatsby. And that has to do again with the the prerogatives of survival of that community and
Right.
an understanding of, despite divisions, there there are divisions, and then there are times you pull together and you have to figure out when to do what. Like,
Yeah.
and so so yeah, so it absolutely offered, again, fertile ground.
Hmm.
Fitzgerald gave me fertile ground to plant new seeds, um and so yeah, there was no, I was at no point did I think that this was going to go in a dramatically different
Okay.
direction.
Okay. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this in a slightly different direction
Okay.
because we always obviously are talking about various things in pop culture. On this podcast, we started with your current, but I want to talk about your past influence. And I do, because you picked something that is musical,
Mhm.
I want to kind of bridge this by asking, when you're writing a novel like The Great Man, are you using music? Is this something like that you have on in the background, whether it's music of the time or just music that like helps you get into a mood to write? And if so, what helped with this book?
So sometimes I listen to music of the time, and that brings it's a way back in, to that world.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's a combination of that and classical.
Okay.
I The problem with just playing my faves is um I like, I'm just want to dance. I just want to get up,
You're not
right?
gonna get any work done.
Exactly, exactly. So that can be a little hard, right? Um, so I love Mozart, but he doesn't give me I'm not grooving to him. So
Right.
it's like, but it does, but I do like having that some kind of sound in the background. And I wrote a book, Just One Lie,
Hmm.
and that is set in the 90s. And then I was listening to all 90s music to like
Okay.
bring me back to that period of time. So, um, or the early, it was like, yeah, like right, it was 1999 exactly, actually turning into 2000. So I just listened to the music of those 2 years. But in this one, some music from the 1940s and then classical.
Okay, so obviously not the thing that you picked, because the thing that you picked was Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, which
Yeah.
came out in 1983. So not, it would be anachronistic if you
Yeah.
said it was
Yeah.
of the time.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about why you picked this, because I originally thought it was all about the music. And
Yeah.
then like leading up to this podcast, you were talking a little bit more about Annie Lennox herself and like her style than I was expecting. So what
Mhm.
can you take us back to like the first time you saw the video or heard the song or however it came to you first, like where you were and like what it was that grabbed you first?
I was 10 in my mom's living room, and probably it used to be that Showtime, because we didn't have MTV yet, um, would show a video before they showed a movie or something like that. It's like
Oh
they
yeah.
would do these little videos. That was my first exposure to videos. And um, so my guess, it must have been Showtime. I can't think of anything else that it would have been on. And and I and there comes this woman. Again, I'm 10. My music has been handed down to me by my parents. Okay.
Okay,
So,
so wait, so maybe set that up for what
right,
was your quote unquote normal listening before this?
right. So, I mean, it was anything from Simon and Garfield to Garfunkel to Garfield, Simon and Garfunkel to Jimmy Cliff, right? And there was some stuff in between. There was Aretha. My mom really loved Linda Ronstadt. It's like, okay, it's like and so that, and I still, all of those, it's like when Jimmy Cliff just died, and that just,
Mm,
oh my God, because it was on loop, right?
right.
Um, but it was definitely not the Eurythmics. Okay. And it was not pop music of the time. The closest we got to
Okay.
that was the Pointer Sisters. And
Okay.
so yeah, so this was new, and I see this woman, and I've never seen a woman like this before.
Mm,
Um, Annie Lennox is standing in front of what looks in a boardroom, in front of like at the head of the table, and she's wearing a suit. And it's not, look, at that time, 1983, if a woman was wearing a suit, it was like almost with a wink, right?
mm.
It's like I'm wearing this
Oh,
suit.
that's
Like,
interesting.
aren't I sexy with this, with like the
Right.
long hair? I could bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan, never let you forget you're a man. That was the narrative, right? That was an ad. It was an actual ad, right? I mean, it's like, and
No,
then
I'm just having flashbacks because my mother used to wear suits to work, and I never thought that way about her. So,
right.
like,
Well,
oh,
no,
yikes.
I don't mean
No, I know
in
what you mean. Like
real
the
world.
image that they
I
were
mean,
projecting in the
yeah, it's like
media. So,
that
but
was
that's what's messing with me a little bit because like I think I saw the image from the media after I saw my mother in the pantsuit.
right,
And
right,
granted, her pantsuit didn't look like Annie Lennox's. So like this is all very
right,
different
right,
anyway,
right,
but it's
right.
interesting to hear that
Yeah, it's like,
that
well,
split.
look, I grew up in Santa Cruz. Nobody was wearing a suit,
Okay, there
period.
you go.
Okay, it's like so, but but yeah, when you looked at the media, it was a different, femininity. If anything, there was a new exploration of power through sexuality,
Mhm.
and I would say that Madonna really capitalized that in the years to come, but that's not what Annie Lennox was doing. Annie Lennox had her hair as short as can be. She had makeup on, but she was nothing about this was there was no come hither thing, right?
Mhm.
There was no like I'm your favorite dominatrix, right?
Yeah.
It was like this was a man's suit, right? Fitted for her, this tall woman who's sitting there with like this um just staring straight into the camera, and embodying power in a way that I've never really seen up to that point a
Hmm.
woman embody power that way, that this is a new way to be a powerful woman. Forget the, again, bringing home the bacon, frying up the
Right.
pan, all that, right? This is not that. She's like, there is no frying.
Well, it's also interesting because the video itself, like, there's this weird to me when I first saw it. Before we get to the cows, because they lost me at the cows. I was like, I thought I knew where they were going, and then it went left.
Right, right,
But
right,
there was the whole, as you're describing, her image and like the powerfulness of being the one talking directly to the camera and the guy typing nonsense, just typing.
right,
If you
right,
look at the keys, they don't make
right.
any sense.
Nothing.
But it felt very much like there's a like a world domination feel to it in a way
Yes,
to me, where it was like
absolutely.
she's in charge, she's the leader, whatever he's doing might set the world on fire. Like literally, like he could press a button and something could explode. And like that's not
Absolutely.
really what they were doing, but the vibe was there.
Yeah, no, they are definitely n- nodding towards sort of a corporate capitalistic dominance of the world, right? Which is not so great. Um,
Right.
but I didn't get that at 10, and
Sure.
it's like, um, and Annie Lennox, I will say, has been consistent in just the way that she has just owned her image without ever bending towards any kind of expectation. I
Mm.
mean, at all. I mean, I saw a recent picture of her, and oh my gosh, it's like to see someone just so proudly age. I feel like,
Yeah.
it's like, wow, and be beautiful and her beauty is right there,
Mm,
with every proud wrinkle. But yeah, it was a completely different thing. And coming up in a world where, particularly coming into the 80s,
mm.
I mean, that was a time.
Well, because
Like,
you were like specifically talking about the video, to me
mhm.
that'll and because you're focusing a lot on Annie herself, like how much did seeing this make you then want to seek out more of the music versus more of like the style and the message?
I was like, so initially it was the music, right?
Okay.
It's like I just started getting, like, it was the rhythmics, I'm like, it was all rhythmics, right? And I will say that I think it was around this time too that I had discovered the Go-Go's. And so I had their albums too. And then of course, again, I was 10, so soon comes Thriller and Prince and all of that. And I have everything expanded.
Mhm.
Um but it was the music. And initially, I will say at that time it was, now that I look, I never really thought about it, but it was very female centric on the
Yeah.
music I listened to those first 2 years. Um and yeah, and it really, the music and the sensibility went hand in hand to
Mm.
me. I didn't distinguish the two. And I think that is, to be honest, the power of music videos, right? So if you see a music video the first time you hear a song, you will never disassociate, okay? It's like, I challenge anyone to listen to This Is America by Childish
Oh
Gambino and
yeah.
not think about the video. You can't do it. I don't even know if I would like the song without the video. I can't, because I can't separate them. It's
Yeah.
just like you hear the music, you think of the visuals. Um, and
That's a good point. I wonder though, because I didn't have MTV either. You mentioned you saw this on
yeah,
Showtime. So there were so many songs that I would hear and not see the video for years. And I feel like this is even one of them because I feel like this was so ubiquitous. It was in so many, it was
right,
in commercials, it was in movies, there were covers that were in commercials
right,
and movies and TV
right.
shows. I feel like I heard the music for years before I ever saw the video. So when
Absolutely.
I don't picture Annie Lennox
Right.
always right away. I picture the scenes from wherever I saw, and that's crazy to
Absolutely.
me. Like
Absolutely.
that shouldn't be how it is.
Well, no, but it's true. It's like, the thing is that there's no song that I have heard first before the video where the video immediately comes to mind. It just doesn't, you
Mm,
know. Um, there's songs where I later saw the video, right? And it's like, oh, that's an interesting video or an interesting take of the song. I see what you're doing there. But again, at that time, like, I mean, saw we were all introduced to Thriller by that video. Okay, it's like that's just what it was, and we're still doing like the dance every freaking Halloween. It's like that's like, we are, that video is that song, period. Okay, I that's not true for me for Prince's songs, because I
mhm.
found Prince music before I found any visuals, before I saw it night long, before Purple Rain came out. um, so yeah, so I don't have that same thing. But I think that if you start that way,
Yeah.
it's very hard to disengage the two.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it now that you said it, especially using the examples you've used because all of the videos are so artistic. There have been some videos through the years where it's really just the person singing. And like
Yeah,
it's a beautiful song, but like I didn't need the visual for that.
no, no,
There's no
no,
extra piece to the story, but
right,
these all have
right.
their productions within
Exactly,
themselves.
exactly, exactly. And look, there are times when there are very artistic videos and well done videos that they're not the first things that come to
Mm,
mind when I hear the song, because again, I heard the song first. Like, Beyonce is a good example of that, right? I don't think of the whole Lemonade thing
sure.
when I hear the music because I heard the music first, right? Um, or, so so yeah, but nonetheless, when you make this like your production, like here is you didn't know Michael Jackson before, you're gonna know him now. We're gonna do something completely different
Right.
that's never been done, right? I think that Childish Gambino did something similar to that. It's like that had people talking for weeks. Um, and yeah, and that was the intro.
Mm.
That's how we learned the song, right? And so it changes. So yeah, so it changes everything. It becomes a visual as well as audio memory. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten to see Annie in concert?
No.
I was like waiting for that evolution of like the visual from the
Like I've
video
been
to
like
the
I've seen
stage.
so many like greats in concert, right? All the and I'm very fortunate that most of them like people who have gone, I've seen them. I saw Michael, I saw Prince, I saw Nirvana, right?
Oh
I saw
wow.
all of these people, and I need to get on the Annie Lennox thing, right? I mean, it's just I don't know, whatever. It's wrong.
It's okay. I figured I would ask. Like it's
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
bad, it's not
No,
like bad that you
no.
haven't. I just
It's
figured
a
like, oh,
horrible thing I haven't.
there would be a story there if you had. So I was like, I
Yeah.
have to ask
Uh,
that.
no, no, no. It's something 100% needs to be corrected. I don't know how.
Well, there's still time. She's still
Yeah,
around.
she
So,
is. She is. She doesn't really do. I mean, at least I'm aware of. Hasn't done the States for a while, but whatever. Anyways, it's okay. I got points. I got
well,
miles.
you mentioned also because I asked about like if this made you want to then follow the music, did it do anything for your 10-year-old style? Did you feel like you like started to say, "Oh, I can dress differently than I thought I had to dress"?
Yeah, I think maybe. I mean, look, I think we all sort of bend in middle school to like, the demands of our peer group. And I didn't veer that far from that, but I will say that early on, I kind of decided I was going to have my own style and my own thing. And I tried to some degree, I tried to wear what other people were wearing. Um, I didn't I didn't look like other people, so it didn't always work anyways, right? And
Hmm.
it's like, and when I say
It
that,
depends on what you were trying to wear, I think. It's
exactly.
like
Well,
you can
yeah.
pull
I
off a
mean, look,
lot.
right. So look, on the one hand, it's like I was very much a minority, right? It's like in my school, it's like there was not there was really not a black population at all.
Hmm.
There was a Latino population, but yeah, so there's that. Then when you get to high school, um, I I just developed fast, and it's like, and so the clothes that some of these girls were wearing just looked really different on me, like I was trying to
Okay.
send a very different message, right? So it's like, but that said, um but in addition to that, I did have this kind of like beat of your own drum, right?
Hmm.
And that, I think, Annie Lennox and others, but I can definitely go back to Annie Lennox, sort of like set the stage to me for that. So, it's like I can be what I want to be. It's like
Right.
someone reminded me of how in eighth grade, um, for Halloween, I put on all this crazy stuff, right? I put on like this tinsel wig, and I had like fluorescent, or was it no, like these shiny tights, right? And then like this bright purple, like kind of leotard thing in a cape, and just like, and I had face paint. It was like totally crazy.
Yeah, but
And
that's
people,
Halloween.
right,
That's not
but it was
Tuesday.
totally crazy, right? And people would say, "What are you?" And I'd be, "I'm your imagination." And right,
Oh.
and my friend Anne, who was like, I actually, one of the few people I still know from middle school, she goes, "Yeah, the rest of us were like, oh, I'm the cat." I was like in eighth grade, like I'm your imagination. And so, it's
Well, that's creative. I mean, that's
right,
much more interesting than
right.
like
It's
there's
like,
that there was a meme, or maybe it was not a meme, but like there was something going around Instagram earlier this year because of Halloween. Basically, the moral of the story was like don't don't leave kids out of stuff. But the whole story was like everybody showed up to class dressed as K-pop demon hunters except for like two kids who didn't know. And
oh,
like what you thought it was gonna go bad, but like the other kids ended up being really nice and like giving them parts of the costume so that they can be included because they thought they knew. And so it was like it ended up being a nice story, but it's also like it speaks to what you're saying of like you don't all need to look the same.
don't
You
gotta do it.
shouldn't all look the same,
Exactly,
especially on a day
exactly.
like Halloween where you can be
Right.
whatever you want.
Do your thing, right? Exactly, exactly, exactly. So, but again, I mean, there's sort of a weird connection to make, but it's like, you have someone like Annie Lennox in a world of like all the women pop stars
Mhm.
had to have a certain look, and she's like, yeah, no, actually, I
Right.
do.
And the fact that she was able to do
Yeah,
that people listened to her,
yeah,
because a few years later, when I was in middle school, and it was like, was I in middle school? I don't even know what year it was, but like the Britneys and the
right,
Christinas and whatever year that was.
right.
No, that was not middle school. I was older. But either way, they all were told they had to do a certain thing and they all just did it. And
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not saying that a 17-year-old is going to have power or knows how to stand up to power, but at the same time, like it was teaching people my age, like, oh, that's what you should look like too. And like, why? Why don't we have
Right.
choices?
Right. Exactly. 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 So so I am very much, I do have a lot of gratitude to those who just said no to that.
Yeah.
Because particularly those in the public figure who are, again, being pushed one direction or another, who just say, yeah, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. That paves, that actually opens doors for a lot of us. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Before I let you go, I always like to tell people where they can find the things that we talked about because you have a book, well, multiple books, but I
Mhm.
don't know where the best place to tell people to get books are. I like to leave that to the author.
Okay.
Is there a place that's best for you if we tell them to go find it in a certain place?
Um, okay, so I always obviously want to encourage you to go to, if you have if there's an independent bookstore that you love, if they don't have the book, just ask them, they will order it for you. So that's my number one,
Okay.
I'm I am also not going to tell you not to go on Amazon. That no judgment, okay?
Sure.
I'm like I we all do. Look, I get the packages. I'm not gonna judge, okay? But this is a book that you can get, any independent bookseller can get their hands on. So if there is, so go to your independent first, ask them for that. Um, and yeah, or indiebound.org, they can do that too. Um, and yeah, and so, um, but, but yeah, help your independent. This times are hard, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
give your little local place a head, leg up.
I used to say that too. And then I was like, oh, I don't even know if how many exist. Like, I don't, I'm in LA, there are
Yeah,
some, but you never
yeah,
know. So I'm
yeah,
glad. That's why I'm like, I'm going to leave it to you. And
yeah,
then it's
yeah.
whatever you say goes.
Yeah, look, if Amazon and Barnes Noble are your thing, I shouldn't even, I won't, let me say Barnes. I'm not going to tell you not to go to Barnes Noble. I want to say Barnes Noble first because they've been really nice to me.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough.
So right, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, if those are your places, do what you're gonna do. No judgment, no shade. Thank you for getting the book.
Okay, well then the music that we talked about, the Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, you can listen to that music anywhere you get music. I don't really know the best place to advise you at this point, but you can also find the video itself that we really more talked about in detail. That's on YouTube. It is legally uploaded to YouTube, so go ahead and check that out. And please come back next week for another episode of Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast. We'll be diving into dance and a new Netflix show which comes out this week with an actor from that show. And as always, I invite you to speculate wildly on who you think that might be or who you hope that might be in the comments on social media.